Okay, welcome everybody to the regular meeting in the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District, and we'll start with the roll call.
Sure. Epstein,
Present.
Schroeder, here, Mitchell, here, Perot, Dornbrook here.
Okay. Eric.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our regularly scheduled meeting. Happy birthday to the Marines and happy Veterans Day observed. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise your hand function.
Okay, and does anyone have any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar? None? Okay, the next is comments from the audience. Opportunity for members of the public to address the board on issues that aren't on the agenda. And I can't tell, are there people?
Hands are raised, Bob?
What?
No hands are raised.
No hands are raised. Okay. Written comments from the public would be in the
Packet.
book, but I didn't see any.
That is correct.
So none there. Okay, so next is adoption of the consent calendar, the minutes of October 13th, consent for claims, receivables, and reauthorizing AB 361. Is there a motion to approve the consent?
So moved.
Okay, seconded by Doug. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we're now ready for finances.
Make it down there.
Okay,
Hello.
and Tommy magically appears.
So you'll note that
Look
we
behind the curtain.
went into more detail on the budget variances. We have a couple things that we pointed out last month. This is the opposite flip of that this month. So they're detailed in there. So that'll give it to Tommy.
Okay, Tommy, take it away.
And as Eric mentioned, a little more detail on operating other, as well as that variance that we talked about last meeting. We also added the month and date at the very top of each of these, so for everyone's review. But just going right into the income statement, unless there's any questions on that.
Well, the month says September.
Correct.
Okay.
This is for
that's what
September
finances is
financials.
for. These are September financials.
Okay.
And that's why we wanted to do that, just making sure that there was no confusion.
Okay.
So income for September for the fire department is 21,251 negative as expected. Water fund with the correction is better than budget by 12,498. The wastewater fund is better than budget by 36,349. Employee housing fund is worse than budget by 1,350, which is traditional. The electric fund is better than budget by 9,349. The snow removal fund is worse than budget by 13,641. Again, this is September financial, so income has not hit at this point. Propane is better than budget by 13,569. And the solid waste is better than budget by 7,878. Do we want to go into any details on any of those?
Anyone have any specific questions? Details?
No.
Peter?
No.
Okay.
No.
Let's see.
And this is last month's cash flow since we weren't able to get preliminaries out.
And this will feed into the LAIF discussion as well, but you can see where our estimated operating revenue is sitting in December through about 3 million, just shy. So that'll come into the LAIF discussion, but this is the most recent cash flow. And then should we move on to the LAIF?
Are there any questions on that? I didn't see. So I know, so we missed the October just because.
We don't have the preliminaries didn't come in yet.
Okay. All right. Yes, so let's move on to item 9B, wage transfer.
So just briefly, generally for the last quite a few years, we've tried to keep our low at December at 1.5 million, which has been our historic where December usually ends up. Right now, as you saw, we have 3 million estimated in December as the cash balance. And so we took this to finance. And in short, the recommendation was to transfer $1 million in keeping with our current policy 695, which wants us to have 2 million in reserve, and then for finance to revisit policy 695, because if we live with 1.5 million for all these years, the theory is maybe we should change our reserve policy. So that's the two recommendations that came out of finance.
Yeah, the interest rate on Lathe and on BMO is what?
The Lathe, so you can see here that here's the most current performance report for Lathe for their quarterly apportionment rate, which is about 3.59, and then BMO is 2%. And Bank of the West, sorry, BMO is 0.2%, and 5-star is, I think, 2%.
2%. Right?
So Lathe for our big operating reserves is still the best way to go.
Yeah, and then how long does it take to draw out of Lathe?
Generally 2 business
2
days.
business days. So
Either way, whether it's a deposit or a withdrawal, it's generally a 2 business day.
so worst case, it happens on a weekend. And
Would be
could be
Monday.
4 days. Right?
Correct. 4 calendar days, correct.
And then the idea was that if we revisit the policy, we could have another transfer this time with that policy, try to change the back point, but the idea is to stick to policy as opposed to some general guideline that isn't in that guideline for short written policies.
Okay. Is there any? We're on 90.
Page 46.
The comment I will have on that is I agree, especially with the two days business day possibilities to transfer fund, that we should reduce the operating reserve. This is what we're talking about, right? Yeah. I think it's even more important if we are going to switch to a different bank, which is a small bank, since small bank can go down, and I think there is less exposure to the district to minimize the operating reserve on the small bank. So I read that the board was shooting for 2 million and a minimum of 1.5. So I'm confused on what the recommendation is. Are we trying to actually lower both by 500?
Well, the current discussion is just to move a fixed amount into Lathe.
Right. So the current policy says we have a goal of 2 million. So we're transferring $1 million into Lathe just to get better return, right? We get a higher interest rate in Lathe than we do out of in the bank. And in addition to that would be, and that's what the policy is 2 million. And then in addition to that, we would review changing the goal from 2 million to 1.5, but that's not part of this. Right now, we're just approving moving. according to
Okay.
policy.
So I'm totally for it. If it's just moving, I thought you were talking about this discussion here, that we wanted to reduce the goal.
Yeah, we've asked the finance committee to review it and make a recommendation.
So in the future, it's not,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I recommend that the consideration is being looking at the fact that it takes only 2 days, 2 business days to transfer fund. Number one, it generates money. Number two, and number three, if we move to a smaller bank, the exposure for the district is bigger.
Okay, so is there any other discussion? Audience questions? Is there a motion to approve the transfer?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Done. Okay, next item, 9C, district banking vendor, possible change.
I'm gonna take this one.
Yes, I'm just making notes, so I'm making sure to transfer that money. So Reagan is on the call right now, as a matter of fact. Five Star is a company that, or a bank that is the main bank from half of the CSDA small districts in California. They also are the banker for California Special Districts Association. They're someone we started reaching out to. We started looking at BMO and seeing the problems that we were running into, which we continue to run into even today. So we started looking, and we were lucky enough to go to that CSDA conference and run into Reagan. Reagan can probably say a lot more than I can. I'm on Five Star Bank, but Eric and I reached out to a few different customers of theirs and have glowing reviews. So I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be said. I don't know if Eric, you want to bring up anything else.
Hang on 1 second. We have a
Hang on,
question.
there's-
We have a problem with speakers. Let's see if we can resolve that first.
Tommy, you would grab Chris and I'm just come in here. Speakers aren't talking to us, that you're hearing us, so they're working on the reception end, just not on the delivering end. For some reason, there's no sound coming on the onkers.
You don't need to hear me anyways.
Let me try that.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
We can hear you.
We're hearing you out of the TV,
TV.
the TV for some reason. Did I try the microphone? That's the old one, right?
You want me to just come in there, Eric? Well, you won't be able to hear Reagan, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, just give us a minute. Let's see if we can figure this out.
It's coming out of the onker.
Oh, I see. Can I drive the mouse?
Yes, of course.
And speak.
What was the floor? Try to test it. Had one on some echoes. At least, close down. Get that. No.
One.
Thank you. Now,
You're out.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Audio.
Better.
One right there. Didn't have plug.
there we go.
All right.
Chris, you're amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we got it.
Got it.
Apologies, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
I probably knocked it loose in all fairness to you. Okay. Okay, so anything I wanted to add? No, Tommy and I did reach out to multiple public utilities that also had switched. Two switched from Bank of the West, which is now BMO, and one switched from US Bank. The comments were pretty consistent, especially glowing customer service and response times, ease of use of the website, et cetera. And so that's that portion there. So with that, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. Reagan, give me a second. You just have to accept it. And one other thing that came out of finance we discussed is, because whether we stay with BMO or go to 5-star, there's no bank nearby, no physical bank nearby. We get petty cash maybe 6 times a year. And so we're recommending that we open a petty cash account that is consistent between those employees that are authorized to handle money that go to the Nevada side and those that go to the Amador side. And so basically, I think we decided that Wells Fargo for our petty cash account was the most convenient, because both Tommy and I can make deposits and Rick can make deposits on the other side, and it's reasonably close. So just a small petty cash account. We don't do it very often. Otherwise, we had to take $200 the other day to South Lake, and we spent more in staff time, labor costs than it was worth. So with that, Reagan, I'll let you take it away with.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Just appreciate you all having me out here today and sharing a little bit about 5-Star Bank. For those of you that maybe hadn't heard of us, we are located in the Sacramento region. We're a $3.5 billion bank. We were started in 1999, and one of our areas of focus is, as mentioned, government banking. So we work with special districts all throughout the state of California, and not just special districts, but any public entity in California. As Tommy and Eric mentioned, we met at the CSDA annual conference. We also bank CSDA, and we're a platinum level affiliate sponsor with CSDA. So very actively involved in the special district community. One of the ways we also are involved with CSDA is we do provide a $10,000 a year scholarship to the GM Summit. So 5-Star provides this scholarship, and it helps offset the costs for districts to send a representative to the GM Summit. So it's one way that we try and partner with CSDA and with districts outside of just our traditional banking services. They talked about several public utility districts that we work with. Hurlong Public Utility District, South Placer Municipality Utility District, Lake Oroville Area Public Utility District. We also work with several districts in and around the Tahoe area. We work with Truckee Sanitary District, Truckee Donner Recreation and Park District, and we're currently onboarding Donner Summit Public Utility District. As mentioned, and I think it's just a few pages down in the board agenda, is a pro forma cost comparison between formerly Bank of the West, now BMO, and 5-Star Bank. You can see the primary, one of the primary drivers between the difference in the costs that the district receives is this earnings credit rate. With Bank of the West, BMO, it's 0.21%, whereas with 5-Star, it's 2%. So, today, typically the district is paying around $400 in bank fees, but with 5-Star Bank, there wouldn't be any costs to the district for the banking services that you utilize. And aside from reducing expenses, the money market account that we're offering the district is at 4%. So that's beating the LAIF rate today. And I know the account with BMO, or the money market account with BMO, is at 0.02%. So pretty significant difference in regards to interest income. And our goal is to help reduce the costs for the district, increase interest income, and then improve operational efficiencies. So that's how we want to partner. And as Tommy mentioned, I would be the primary direct point of contact for Kirkwood Meadows PUD. There's not a 1-800 number you call and, hope you get connected to the right person. It's, me, you have a direct line, my cell phone. So here to be a resource for the district, and just wanted to add that additional color and commentary in today's discussion. So happy to answer any questions that you guys have about Five Star Bank.
Your questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. So you are FDIC secure, so that's 250K, yeah, 250K for deposits. Is that it? Is there any strategy that we could use to minimize exposure? I'm thinking about Silicon Valley Bank going down, and fortunately, the federal stepped in and nobody lost their deposit in this situation, but smaller banks are higher risk on that. So what do you have any strategy that could minimize such a risk?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we are an FDIC insured bank. And just before I answer that, just to touch on the bank's financial strength and financial performance, last year, S&P Global Market Intelligence rated Five Star Bank the #1 performing community bank in the nation for banks within our asset size, which is 3 to 10 billion. We're a $3.5 billion bank. And then to address your question about collateralizing and securing the district's funds, per government code, any public entity's funds have to be fully collateralized. So the funds that you would deposit here at Five Star Bank would be fully collateralized, and we predominantly use the Federal Reserve Bank out of San Francisco, a letter of credit. And the reason we use the letter of credit as collateral is because in the event something were to happen to the bank, right? If the bank failed, the district would be able to access those funds the next business day, as compared to if we were using securities. And let's say we bought those treasuries or securities 2 years ago, at a low rate, you would have to wait till those matured before the district would have their funds. But again, we use the Federal Reserve Home Loan Bank out of San Francisco letter of credit, so that if something were to happen to the bank, the district would have their funds the next business day. But per government code, the entirety of the district's deposits have to be fully collateralized. We send a call report to the state ensuring that we have the proper collateral in place per government code. So above the 250,000 FDIC insurance limit, the funds are fully collateralized per government code. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions? No? Okay, you've answered our questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, is there any other discussion on this, or is there a motion to?
I'd like to ask another question. Yes.
Okay.
So clearly, comparing Bank of the West to BMO and to Five Star is clearly positive to switch. My question would be, which other bank have been approached to try to find banks that basically offer higher interest rate, earning credit rate, you call that here, beside Five Star?
We reached out to Wells Fargo and Chase Bank, and they did not respond.
They did not
Yeah,
respond.
Doug asked us to do that at finance, and we reached out to them. They did not respond.
That's the only thing I would have wished for, is to have actually a table with three banks and not one. But if they don't respond,
Yeah, if we need a non-responsive bank, we already have one.
It's actually worse than the non-responsive, to be honest.
That's true. That's true.
In fact, East Meadows is switching from BMO. They've had the exact same experience we had.
Yeah.
And they're about to switch.
Okay, are there other questions? If not, entertain a motion to.
Moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
All right, Reagan, I'll
all
start
right,
getting this
it's a
paperwork
deal.
done and get this to you next week.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, all. I visited the district earlier last month and Tommy gave me a tour and it's a beautiful district. So very much looking forward to partnering with you and serving as your primary day-to-day banking partner.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you again, Reagan.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, next item, 9D, performance reporting. Hello, Brandy.
Hello. So in this packet, we have performance reporting through October. And we'll just go ahead and get started with electric. As you can see, we've got September and October's numbers here from the last board meeting. Our sales have not really started climbing yet. October was still a fairly slow month. We had 21% and 18% losses reflected in those months, respectively, bringing us to 12% for the year. Quick update, kind of off topic. I was able to discuss with Dave Rightly yesterday our addendum to the master plan for electric, which is going to have information on losses, his thoughts on those national averages and what we might can do about this. So still at the forefront of our mind. For propane, it did get colder, so we did see some increase in sales in propane for October over September. Year to date for propane, we're at 5% loss. Moving on to water. If you see, we had a pretty close between metered and production for September. And then October, we had an 18% loss, showing 8% for the year. And then lastly, wastewater. As you can see, it got cold. We've slowed down any I&I that we were seeing. And we're year-to-date total I&I of 41%. Any questions on those numbers before I have one last thing on this? Okay. So at the last meeting, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. The last meeting, we had a question about trying to compare year-end totals to try to get trends on each of the utilities. I took a stab at this. I'm not sure if this is what we're looking for or what would be helpful. But this is just a plot of the last 5 years ending numbers for each utility. And then in the background, the bars are inches of snow, because that definitely has a fairly large impact on our business. You could argue that perhaps temperature range might be more useful for things like propane. But I just wanted to put this in there and get any comments about what would be better than what we have shown here.
So comment that you are, I'm ready for comment if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah. So first, thank you. I think this is very useful. I like personally the snow coverage. It gives you a sense of the year. I mean, yes, temperature would be another data point that you may want to add in some means, but it actually shows a number of things already. Just the way it shows here, it shows that we do have an I&I problem that is persistent actually, and we made. I mean, it was lower the small snow year, but it clearly is still a big section, and I think the district need to make progress on that front. Also, I'd like to make a comment on the discrepancies of the scale for each utilities. It's because the units are actually very different. I mean, sometimes it's cubic feet, sometimes it's kilowatt hour. And so it's all showing up on one single graph, making a bit more difficult to see what's happening for electrical. So I just wonder if a logarithmic scale would help for that. Maybe not, maybe yes. I think it'd be interesting to try that if you put for the Y ordinate, if you could put it on logarithmic scale so we can see better for electricity and water. There is actually a slight increase on the losses for electricity. It doesn't show up very well here for the reason I just explained. It really underscores the fact that we need to try to identify more of our losses, and so we can remediate them instead of just making a statement that we have so many losses. So but anyway, so it is quite useful. I really recommend this kind of exercise done every year at the end of the fiscal year when you have all your data, because I think it'd be useful to monitor trend and see if there is any deterioration and stuff like that. So I find it very useful personally. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I could give lots of comments, I think, about charting and things like that, but I would just say the easiest way to consume this for me would be if I think the different entities run just different charts. Just consume it as electric, propane, water, wastewater separately, probably.
Okay, thanks.
Actually, I had another comment I forgot about is on propane. For the first year in 23, we actually did not over meter. I mean, for the previous 4 years, we are always over metering. And just wondering if that's the case, maybe some adjustment should be made the following year so we can actually, instead of always over metering, maybe at the end of the year, since we have this propane adjustment, maybe that should be done on a yearly basis. That'd be a recommendation to look into that.
Okay. Any other comments for Brandy? Okay, should we move on to the meter status?
Thank you. So we have similar numbers to what we saw last month. We are getting notices out this week for final notices for people who have not completed meter shed improvements. The list is fairly small, smaller than even it looks here. All of the ones, as I reported last time, the June through October meter sheds, they're listed here. All are structurally complete but awaiting vents. Of the November shutoff dates, I believe 10 of those are currently in process. There's a contractor or the homeowner on site building those. We had one additional customer contact us for a potential extension. They've submitted a plan and have started submitting their purchases. So we will have some notices going out this week. I am optimistic that we will have single digits, 5 or less actual shutoffs, but we are continuing to push on these. John Campbell's been doing a great job contacting everybody repeatedly, making sure that they know that these are upcoming. So that's residential. Commercial, we are actually down to 2. And of those 2, one has a plan. The December one has a plan in place. They are getting ready to do that construction. The one in November is a venting issue also. I did not get an update this morning, but John was going to meet with that HOA on site to make sure they were clear on what our venting requirements were. So I expect these 2 to get resolved also with no commercial shutoffs. And that's all I have on meter protection, unless there are questions.
Any questions?
I do have a question. So I'm a bit confused. So you said that the first 7 of 6, that June, August, and October are actually structurally complete?
They are, so these are all propane and they are, the shed is completed, but we require vents to be installed. And there was, some people were having trouble getting vents and we've had multiple people report that. So each of these is complete except for the vent itself has not been installed, but they have been ordered.
Yeah, I would be a bit uneasy for the district to shut off people because they cannot receive in time a vent. I don't know. I mean, especially at this time of the year, the vent is happening from below because all these things are fairly high. And so you are still planning, if people have not that vent, to send them a notice of shut off?
No, we aren't. Thank you for clarifying. These six, plus a number of them in November, we have on a list that we're keeping track of so that we know they get their events in, but we are not planning to shut them off because of that, as long as the structure is complete.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's move on to item 9F then, the heat pump phase 1.
Okay, this is me too. So we were asked to bring back a review of the heat pump project and how it has worked, the cost of it. And that's what you have here in the staff report. I won't go through all of the details unless there are questions, but we did have it installed. We had to do some upgrades to our panel downstairs because it is a commercial unit. It was a fairly expensive unit, $37,700 total. I think everybody in the office who spends any time here agrees that it has been well received. It's nicer in the offices where it's covered. We were able to offset almost 3,000 kilowatt hours. We saw an increase of almost 3,000 kilowatt hours with a decrease of about 14,000 cubic feet. So the cost savings is not huge for us based on today's numbers. But we did see, an increase in comfort and some savings in propane. Looking at it just on an ROI basis, we're looking at a payback that's longer than the life of the unit. But it is a pleasant addition to the office, and I would be happy to answer questions from the board.
Question. So my understanding is when this project went on, there was issue with the current heating system for the CSB building. And I don't know if it was defective or there was need to upgrade, but basically one of the motivation here is because it was not working in a satisfactory fashion. Is that correct?
What we've been told by our heating air conditioning specialist is that it's undersized for the building. So the two furnaces, the propane furnaces, would have trouble keeping up with the large space. So yes, it has been in past years colder in the office than it was this last year.
So, and that's the first point I would like to make. So to compare the ROI, you should have included the cost of upgrading the system to the same level of specification, or basically of comfort. And also need to be added that this still including AC, while the heating system was only doing AC, was doing only heating. Is that correct? Oh,
correct.
No.
It was doing AC as well?
Yes, it was doing both.
He's doing both. But anyway, but he was undersized. So that would change the ROI if you would do that comparison. So I think anyway, and also I think I've mentioned that several times. I think when we do a report like that, we do have financial consideration, but I think it'd be great to have environmental consideration. So I don't know when this is going, what the exact status of laws for district on improving or reducing the emissions, but this is the kind of thing that actually does that. We are consuming 3 megawatts of electricity more, which is better for the district because we have excess capacity. It's reducing by 14,000 cubic feet, the consumption of propane is also something which is beneficial to the district. So I really think looking at the ROI is a too narrow way of looking at this process. And the other thing I would love to know, and I have a little clue now based on your comment, but how much is the phase 2 going to cost? Phase 1 was 37,700, and that including electrical upgrade. I'm assuming the upgrade have been done in a fashion that is going to be compatible with phase 2, so we don't have to go through additional cost on that. Is that correct?
That is correct. I don't have the number in front of me. I'm sorry. I thought I had it in here. But the cost of the electrical upgrades was around $7,000. We did that in-house. So the unit itself with the install of that was around $30,000.
Howard?
Yeah, Randy, what price for electricity was used in that return on investment analysis?
I used our current per kilowatt hour charge.
22 cents.
Correct.
Yeah, that's another comment. Is the propane rate are likely to increase in the future if we effectively spend $1 million to improve operation. So that's another caveat on the ROI.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, good. Thank you.
So my question would be on this thing is about phase 2. Is it actually budgeted at this time?
No,
No, not this year, not next year.
you'd have to look at the capital budget that you approved. It was in there,
Yeah. So
but we don't have actual numbers from the Riley Heating and Air.
yeah, and the next question would be, what would be the recommendation of staff if should we proceed on phase 2?
It's whatever we put in the budget.
Yeah.
I have to
Up
look
to
it
the
up,
board
but
to
that's
decide.
when we had scheduled it for. Okay, we're ready to move on then to item G.
Still you, Brandy.
All right. So Tommy and I reached out to Shell based on our conversation at the board meeting about a cost of goods sold adjustment charge. We wanted to get a handle on what hedge prices were available and what that would look like. So we did get that information. Included in this report is some background on when we hedged previously, when we decided to stop hedging. Shell was kind enough to provide us some kind of overview information about market conditions and what can cause fluctuations like we saw last year. And so we have here in this board report 2 options, the first of which is based on a hedge from Shell, which is included as Exhibit 1. And basically, it's a set price per kilowatt hour on peak or off peak for the next 3 years is what they gave us. But we would think that we would only do this through the next electric rate study. And then if we scroll down one more page, I believe we have kind of a look at, and it's not apples to apples. This is our best shot at telling you what it would have looked like had we been hedged. So the blue line is the day ahead actual cost that we paid for energy only at the node that we're connected to. The orange and gray lines are what Shell indicatively priced for us going forward. And so they're just kind of overlaid here. You can see that December, March, April, and then June had a spike also. We paid more on the day ahead market than we would have if we'd been hedged at this cost. But then there were quite a bit of time when it was below also. So for board discussion, Shell is able to and happy to provide forward pricing for us like this, they're happy to continue on the index also. But if we are going to use an option to add a set amount per kilowatt hour, staff recommends that we do it based on a hedge cost of at least the average that we would see for the year.
Brandy, so if we hedge, we have to predict how much we want every hour for the year?
We do that anyway. So we would be doing, we would recommend as staff that we do what we did before, which was 80% of on-peak hedge and 50% of off-peak. And this is, it's on a monthly basis. Our predictions for this are, and what happens is we buy from Shell ahead of time. We own this power. If in the hour we don't use that much power, they sell it for us on either the day ahead market or the real-time market. If we need more power than we have budgeted for, they buy more for us on the index.
So basically it's a blended approach that
It is. And when we first went out to talk to Shell, and back then we had a consultant, Don Dame, who was the guru of hedging. And that was what was recommended to us, to try to give us some price stability, but also allow us to benefit if prices were lower than the hedge, which in the years of 15 through 17 happened pretty regularly.
Remind me what peak and off peak is in this scenario then?
So peak is, oh gosh, let me see if I can get this right. 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday, except for holidays, except for FERC holidays. So not on Sunday, not on the major holidays. So a lot of those are busy times for us.
It's not a seasonal peak off peak, that's 52 weeks?
It is not. No, it is pretty much the daylight hours of every day, every Monday through Saturday of the year, except for some big holidays.
So the daylight are off peak or peak?
On peak. On peak. So off peak is 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. most days of the week.
At night, yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes peak is less expensive than off peak.
Yes. And that's a change since we did this in 2015. I was looking at that, and I think from talking with Shell, that seems like because of the solar that's come on in the meantime. Previously, our off-peak was always less expensive.
The state curtails about 10% of the solar because there isn't enough demand.
Okay, I have other questions and comments here. So the first one is just a typo thing. So it still say agenda item 9F instead of 9G in the package. Second, with discussing with Eric Rickert, I was actually informed that KMPUD has been approved to join the WAPA. Not sure what exactly, Western something.
WAPA.
WAPA, yeah. Which should actually guarantee steady rate at a lower cost than we have currently.
Can I just interrupt right there? Because that's not true anymore. That was true in 2020. So WAPA is going through a rate making process right now, which will be approved before we get to 2025, and the rates are going to be about the same as what we pay with Shell. So there is no savings with WAPA, and it's only 15% of our total load is all we're getting from WAPA. So we're still going to be going through Shell. So the savings we thought we were going to get, it's going to be a lot less. There's almost a wash.
Still much more stable than the day-ahead market.
But we did look at this quite a bit last year,
Yeah.
and it's only 15% of our load, so it's on the margin.
Okay,
So
so anyway,
we can consider it, but it's not a big
I thought
benefit.
this should have been actually mentioned into the system here because this is important information. Number two is actually, so here we have two solutions. So we are basically hedging, purchasing edge market. So we are removing risk. But we actually spend more money for getting electricity. The reason we actually we need property tax on electrical rate is basically to secure our covenant for the RUS, which basically you have two ratios that we have to respect. However, we've seen last year what happened in this fairly extreme situation last year, which is unlikely to reproduce itself, but we never know, I agree. So the next thing I'd like to say is that 100K basically that was basically we lost
No, $700,000.
$700,000. Yeah. On the whole year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I tried to figure this out. It's broken down into two things. One is the actual cash loss is one thing. The other is the opportunity loss, since we sold 7.2 million kilowatt hours, but we budgeted for 6.3 or 6.5. So that difference meant that we had higher margins. So some of that was opportunity that we lost. That would have been additional savings we could have used, but the rest was hard cash of the expenditure.
Yeah.
So it was very expensive. And my opinion, the only reason we could afford it is because delays in the wastewater treatment plant meant that we had less debt, that we had to service that way. If it happened again this year, I don't know that we could make it work without, I don't know, without losing reserves, significant reserves.
Taking more debt.
Yeah.
So anyway, where I was coming to is, instead, I mean, it doesn't offer the same protection than hedging, but it actually offers some other value. Is if we are increasing our rate to be computed based on what you describe here, we would actually can basically self-hedge ourselves. So we would have the margin to cover higher cost of good. And if luckily, and probably because this year, I mean, we have our dams are full, the natural gas is actually much lower than it used to be then. So we could basically self-hedge ourselves by putting a little more meat on the bone rate that we have, and if we don't use it for cost of goods, then that would free up tax allocation that could be used, for example, for KVFD or else. So, but basically, that a third option that I think should be looked into. Besides just hedging ourselves and moving to dynamic pricing, which I find very troublesome because of many reasons. I'm not going to get into that unless we want to open the topic on that. But I think it is a significant change to the electrical rate that we put together in the last rate study. And I don't think this is something we can push on the community without proper consultation, because the way it works, people rent space and all stuff kind of situation that's happening here. So the people who actually are going to pay the dynamic pricing may not be the people that actually consume the electricity. So there is a lot of unintended consequences on that system. So, as I said, I would recommend to at least study an option that we put actually a little more electricity, increase a little bit the electrical rate, so we have more margin to play with if in case we do have a cost of good that actually increase significantly.
And I think we did that at one of the earlier meetings, and it was like,
Say that again?
It'd be 10 cents.
yes, it was like 8 or 10 cents a kilowatt hour. We did that math at a previous meeting.
In which meeting? In finance?
No, here. I asked that question like 2 or 3 meetings ago, and Tommy, we kind of spitballed at the meeting, and it came out to something like 8 cents a kilowatt hours with something.
Somewhere between 8 and 10 cents.
10 cents a
depending on
kilowatt
how
hour, that
calculated,
would
would be
be
the
So it'd be like
self-insurance.
30, yeah, our self-insurance option was like 30 to 32 cents a kilowatt hour. Ballpark.
Yeah, that if you want to hedge as much as we of last year, which is very unlikely to reproduce itself. And anyway, I don't think.
Well, the
I
answer
mean,
is,
clearly
the answer
this
is
year.
at most 32 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you wanted to hedge less than that, then it would be less than 32 cents.
So I
there's-
think 32 is excessive. You said just 8 cents and we have 22, that'd be 30 cents
there's 8
as
to
a
10.
starter. Yeah, no, it makes a difference.
Are there other board questions? And now we'll go to the audience. So let me just say, we can't afford another year like we had before. We do not have the cash. It's significant, and it's been all the way until May of this year until the wholesale rate got down to what we budgeted. So it isn't just the peak in December. Every other month was between double and 6 times the rates that we're planning. So we cannot afford to continue this way. We're at very high risk. So I think we need, so one option is if we can actually do this hedge and it's only 1.4 cents per kilowatt hour to do it, we're protecting everybody against really high prices. And if not, we have to have the ability to recover our losses because we don't have enough capability of managing them. So those are my thoughts on it. There are other board thoughts? Now we'll go to the audience. Okay, Howard?
Yeah, well, I got a couple questions for John and for Bob in particular. Do you remember arguing for 14.7 cents a kilowatt hour in this meeting? Do you remember that? Bertrand and I were advocating for 30 cents kilowatt hour. If we'd had 30 cents kilowatt hour, where would we be? Would we have lost 700,000? I think so. I think you need to reopen the rate study. If you're going to consider changing the rate structure, I mean, if you just want to add on a penny or two, that's one thing. But if you're going to like change the way you charge, this district needs a new rate study. I don't care if it's scheduled for 2025. The last one was basically done on false pretenses. You communicated something to the community. You didn't say that we were at risk like this.
Okay. Other comments? Is there anything on there?
Oh, wait, there's one.
What caused the spike in energies? Was it the war?
Cost of natural gas, wasn't it?
That's what caused the spike?
That's one cause.
Yeah.
There might have been others.
And Fleur had her hand up.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, Suzanne Fuller, and I just wanted to say that I do think this needs to be studied carefully, and clearly our costs and our rates need to reflect the costs so that the district is covering, or the rates are covering the actual costs of this, but it needs to be done in a way that is studied and not just a last minute band-aid patch because what was set last year is not working. And just coming up with a band-aid, maybe it's temporary, but I do think that we need to look at the broader picture and how to do this in a way that's fair and it needs to be brought back to the community for discussion, and not just made as a last minute change. You guys spent several years developing the rate study, and here we are trying to last minute make changes to it because it didn't work and ended up costing the district a lot of money.
Okay, thank you. Any others?
Just, can you clarify for me? Because I don't remember, because Howard's is making a point, and it sounds like Amflor is making a point that if we had 30 cents a kilowatt hour, then we would not be in this situation. But I would have imagined then if it was 30 cents a kilowatt hour, the base rates would be different and would be like, is that, am I understanding that correctly? I don't remember the exact conversation, but.
Well, the key thing is if 30 cents, if the usage rate that we have is sufficient to cover what we purchase, we don't have a problem. The problem we have now is because we assume there will be no increase in change in electrical rate, which is totally silly. And so if we had 30 cents, we would not have lost on the year electricity at a loss.
That's what I'm saying. That's true, because you would have the fixed charges that would have been recouped in that 30 cents. You would have adjusted that. All things equal, with all the other things embedded in it, sure. But the whole, I guess I'm just trying. Whatever. I don't even that matters. I'm just trying to understand that sense.
Bottom line, what I think what we are at this stage is, I don't think it's reasonable to add dynamic pricing to our electrical rate. I can see why, for safety, we could add this 1.4 cents and edge like that. That I could vote for, but I cannot vote for dynamic pricing. It's such a big change. It's so different to what was actually explained to the community. It's just a bait and switch.
Yeah, I mean, I have said, I mean, I've made this comment 3 years ago. I asked, why don't we do dynamic pricing? And the answer was because the prices never change, and they hadn't for a while, and now they are. And so I agree with you that it's a challenge that we need to overcome.
Yeah.
I think we need to overcome it before this winter, though, because we don't have the opportunity to have a December. And maybe you're right. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know, but maybe it's going to be the exact same thing. I don't think as fiduciaries of this district, we have the ability to wait for a full rate study for a year to figure out how to solve this as we come into a winter. So I think something has to be done now. And I don't know that it's dynamic pricing. I think a hedge could work, but I think that we have to do something.
Edge work, because we will be edge, by definition. So, yeah.
Yes.
So you said there was like a $700,000 loss in effect. How much of that was due to the fact that we sold more electricity than we had budgeted?
I don't know.
Because those are at a direct loss. In other words, if our cost,
It's about 10%. Right, so they're between 6.5 and 7.2. So about 10%, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
the idea I thought was that we would sell more electricity and that we'd make some extra profit on it, and it would help.
Which we do. That's why we lost 700K.
You would have
No, I
first.
took away that
Yeah,
part.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's pure profit after 6.5 for that delta. So that was good,
So,
but the cost of the goods is killing us.
so Brandy, you think we could protect our customers against widely fluctuating prices at about 1.5 cents? You think that could be made to work?
We would have to go back to Shell because these prices are, they're only good for 5 days. And with the
Right.
market doing what it's doing, it could have changed. It appears that by adding at least 1.4 cents, we'd hit the average. So we'd be adding in a significant dose of stability. It certainly would not go so far as to recover anything that we lost last year.
Well, no, of course not. Yeah. We're just trying to protect against the extremes.
Yeah, I'll be curious about what we would get for 2 cents, actually, moving from 22 to 24. because we hedge ourselves. The more we hedge, the safer we are.
Yes, if we were to raise it to like 24 and our actual cost is more like 22 and we're selling more power, does that mean that we could put that money into reserves and use that for future when maybe we have a higher cost of goods? Could we be doing that? In other words, building up kind of a reserve, cover the fluctuations?
I mean, yeah, we have a giant reserve and almost all that money in our reserves is electrical out of that 3 million.
So actually, I have a question related to reserve actually. So we are obligated to do 105%, 105% for one of our tier ratio.
Yeah.
Forcing us to put for this year 450K into electrical department.
Right.
But this is actually not money that we need to run the department. We just need for the tier ratio. So what happened with that money? I know that the electrical department keep loaning money left and right to other entities, but is that a reserve that we are building?
The 100% we need, because that's our
That's the
actual cost.
Yeah.
The 5% accumulates and we use that to pay down the debt.
Yeah, but that's the question I would ask. I think I don't think we should accelerate paying the debt, because the more we spread
Well, the debt
payback.
decision is done on at each time a bond becomes due, the board makes a decision. So that's decided each step of the way. It's not predestined. It's an opportunity, and the reason why we came up with the ladder is so that opportunity would exist, so we could choose to pay down the debt or refinance it. Refinancing it currently is pretty expensive.
Yeah, but the bottom line is we are taking almost half of our property tax to subsidize the electricity, and then you want basically to use that money to pay back the loan faster. But why don't we stick to our loan? We have a schedule and use this money as reserve, so we have we are hedging ourselves. We don't have to purchase hedge. Now this year I think we may have to, because we don't have the reserve. But and also I'm very curious to see that someone actually study carefully and present to the board what the swap are saying, how much percentage, what he would do, what kind of rate. And I know it's not set in stone, but as of now, it's nebulous. So if we don't have any reserve, my recommendation would be to hedge for this year. I cannot
So
for
the WAPA, I would defer to Eric. That's 2025.
Correct.
Okay, so there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
In 2025.
Well,
In terms of
next
that-
rate study will go when that comes.
Yeah,
into
and then the
effect.
next race, in terms of the hedge, the revenue has to match the calendar year. So any extra revenue we have in January can't get applied to the previous year. So once that year has passed, any additional margin we had can't be used as a substitute for revenue.
Right.
So
if we are not accelerating the payment on the debt,
that's a totally separate decision, right?
it's a separate decision.
Right.
If we are not doing that, then we would not need as much property tax allocation the next year.
The property tax is there primarily to cover our loan covenants.
Yeah, but if we are keeping the money that we have as a security for the loan to reach this 105 ratio, then we would not need as much money from the property tax.
In the same calendar year, that's true.
That's
Once you
correct.
change calendar years, any surplus you've created in the previous calendar year doesn't help. So it has to match that calendar year.
Yes, I understand.
And that's the benefit of the property taxes, is we apply it. The whole strategy behind this was, rather than having rates that are higher than we need in case we have a shortfall, we use the property taxes to balance that out. And that way we've been able to keep our rates closer to to what the average is. In my opinion, if we can hedge against the extremes for 1.4 cents, to me, that makes a lot of sense.
I'd support that. I mean, again, 2 cents, if we want to be really safe and secure or whatever, I'd be amenable to that. But
I think if the board wants to go with option one, I would recommend 2 cents because we won't have that gives. If it's more than 2 cents, I'd have to come back to the board and then pricing will change again.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I have that little cushion, hopefully any changes,
So you're proposing up to 2 cents?
whatever it ends up being.
Yeah,
that
up
we
to 2
get from
cents.
them, yeah.
Other opinions, Peter?
Mhm.
It sounds reasonable that we need to increase the hedge.
Yeah, I'd support that. And, I definitely don't think we can defer this for a prolonged period of time.
What's the quickest that we can actually make this decision? We have to have public hearings and stuff, don't we?
What's the notice?
Like 3 months.
I'd have to go back and look because we're not subject to 218 on
No,
electric
we're-
rates.
They're not.
No, only on water and wastewater
We can,
Well, the
and
board,
fire.
had stated multiple times that we would not change rate on electricity without basically having public hearings. So
So, I mean, what kind of a window do we have?
we could do it.
Somewhere
And that,
between 60 and 90 days if we're going to go that route.
I would just put the notice out now and have a discussion at the next board meeting. That's a lot safer than running through the winter wondering what's going to happen.
especially given last December was the month that had a spike. It would be nice if we could have increased revenues in December's
And you're
usage.
comfortable with the 2 cent rate increase would protect us from it's kind of a last
Brandy is telling us that it would provide a lot of,
Brandy, could we
coverage.
ask for new hedge pricing on Friday, December 10th? Or December 8th, whatever that Friday is. Could we ask for hedge pricing to be delivered that day? So if the board took action, we could give an answer by Monday, which is within the 5-day window.
Yes, we certainly could. I do not believe that they would be able to, I mean, we could know what that cost was and add the 2 cents or whatever the decision was. We wouldn't actually be able to hedge with Shell, I don't believe, until January. So we could have the pricing, make a decision, and even increase the rates by the 2 cents, but we wouldn't have the stability of the forward hedge until that was all signed and agreed upon and starting in January.
yeah, and in the meantime, we would be building a little bit reserve with the extra 2 cents.
just for the month of December, and
Yeah.
it only apply to calendar year 2023.
Yeah.
So it's not material.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the hedging is per calendar year.
the loan service tier ratios are based on the calendar year.
Calendar year.
The calendar year revenues has to match those ratios for that same calendar year. Yeah. Okay, is there a motion?
Moved.
No, let's be clear about what the motion is.
Okay,
'Cause
so the motion is, yeah, go ahead.
Notice.
I just want to. We'll notice that there will be a rate hearing on the next December meeting, the 8th or the 10th, whatever that day is. We'll send out notice for that. We'll try and get Shell hedge pricing. So we have actual numbers that the board can decide on that day.
Mhm.
And then we'll make the adjustments in January.
And it would take effect in January.
Is that what-
If the board so chooses.
But is that what the motion is? I just want to make sure.
I mean, I guess.
Brandy, is that accurate?
Well, actually, before I move to that, can I ask a question, Brandy? If we did this, if we had a special meeting in November after Thanksgiving, would that be time enough to have the hedge go into effect in December?
I'm not sure. I could certainly ask and get back to everyone, but we were given this starting in January. So I would have to confirm that with Shell.
Yeah, I'm asking.
Yeah,
I don't know, I'm asking.
And that and to clarify, we're only gonna hedge through the end of the current rate study period.
Correct.
So when we tell Shell we're gonna hedge, it'll go through whatever that, I guess, June 30th of 25.
Okay.
That's. Isn't that the rate study?
I thought the study was in 25. So now
I think it's fiscal year 25, 26, I thought, but you might be right.
looks
We did
like,
5 years. When did we adopt it?
so it looks like it ends in Q2 26.
Yeah.
So when would the new rate go from that study? Fiscal 20, that's fiscal 20.
Yeah, so it starts in fiscal 20, the beginning of 25, 26. So yeah. So I guess it would go through 26 then. How about it just goes through the end of the current rate study? How about that? Instead of putting a year in it.
Sounds good.
Sure. Let you figure out what that is.
Otherwise,
Yes,
all
I'll
these
let you-
things will come back later.
Right.
So I just need to make sure the motion is clear.
Second motion.
That would be my motion.
All right, second.
Further discussion?
So we are moving to increase our rate up to 2 cents. That's what it is?
No,
No.
No,
Not what was
why don't you just repeat it again?
So Eric, say it. Start it over.
I believe Doug's motion is that we will, one, get Shell pricing for the next board meeting.
Yes.
Present that at the board, whatever that is. Is it 2 cents? Is it 1.5 cents? Is it 3 cents? We don't know. So
Okay.
there is no numbers attached to it.
Okay.
Two, that the duration of it is through the current rate study. And three, that we hedge.
And we'd hold a public hearing at the
And
next
the
board.
public
meeting.
hearing will be at the December meeting. So we'll notify customers next week.
That is my motion.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay. Brandy, thanks for the work. Really helpful. Appreciate it.
So I still have a question for WAPA. There is some time constraint for WAPA because the last time we could not get on it.
No, it's not.
Oh, I don't want to go into it then.
Do you want to,
So I
You-
just think we need some update on
why don't you
what
bring
the
on the general
possibilities.
discussion? Why don't why
Okay.
don't you ask
Okay,
for that and we'll do it there.
that sounds good.
Okay, all right. Okay. Planning committee topics.
So for planning committee, we've had a couple of agenda topics that have brought up over the course of the last year or so, but we had some ideas of things to look at going forward. And my goal with the planning committee has always been to reflect whatever the board has recommended, right? So don't want to work on something and spend staff time in particular on items that the board does not endorse us spending time and thinking about. And so that has been what I've done for the last 2 years, and I wanted to continue in that spirit. So there were a couple of conversation topics that came up through the planning committee as potential future topics. One of them was adding related to electric rates, having a discount on the KWH rate for electric residential customers. And then another one was looking at there's a heat pump study in, I want to say 2017, 2020, 17, I don't know, 19, I can't remember. It was a couple of years ago, and looking at that and maybe thinking about how to update that, and we're already thinking about this in the context of working with customers in some ways of understanding their usage, but this would be more of digging into that more in some ways. So those are kind of two areas that just wanted to get guidance from the board, as if these are two areas that the board would be interested in talking about. I will say, just at a high level too, I know likely in December, there will be some sort of reorganization of committees and people on committees and things like that. And I think that's a good time to think about what the goals of, I would say, each of the committees are, but planning in particular. In that I don't know that the planning committee has worked on topics in general that were, thinking about how to do the PBC funding is not planning for the future in some ways. That's just implementing a program. And so I wonder, with these topics and the planning committee and how we do all those things, that's something that I think we need to think about as board and as a community, what we want to be doing on these committees. I say that with some backdrop of maybe a future conversation. But in the meantime, in Bertrand, I know you had the first one that was something that you had brought up, and Ann Ford focused on the second one. So I'll defer to them if they had anything else that they wanted to say about either of those points, but that's the point of this topic.
Okay.
So I'm confused here. So we are talking about the planning committee report, correct?
No,
Planning committee report? No.
No. So what are we talking about?
We're on agenda item 9H right now.
9H.
That's correct.
I don't have that.
It's on
So
page
now I'm confused.
3 of the agenda.
So you're asking for guidance whether the board wants the planning committee to pursue
Correct.
an all-electric customer rate discount and an updated heat pump study.
Correct.
So my comment on, I don't think the planning committee need authorization to look into a heat pump study that was already actually assigned to the planning committee by previous board. And we shelved it at the time because we thought that was not actually conducing to anything. But looking at this such study and actually updating that study is something the planning committee should actually be able to do, especially since we had so many meetings which were canceled because of so-called no agenda item. So that's my first take on that. My second take, yes, I think we should consider an all-electric residential customer rate discount, because this is actually improving the leveraging of our infrastructure with more people using electricity and less using propane. So that meet the need of the district and the capacity of the district. It's not, nothing is compulsory here. Don't say that we want to shut off propane to anybody. It's just we want to incite people to switch financially. And with this will result in higher usage of our infrastructure. And we have, the more we sell electricity, the higher margin we have. That's my comments.
What are we being asked? If we
What?
wanted, if we're planning to work on this?
That's not exactly. It's the 2 other topics.
Okay.
Eric, I don't know if you answered.
oh, yeah, and I would just say that last time we talked about the all electric rate, the consensus of the board at that time was to defer it to the rate study, so. Ann Fleur has her hand up.
Well, let me just say that there's another way to word this, because we don't save any money. So this discount has to be covered by somebody else paying higher. So the other way to look at this is if you have propane, you have a higher electric rate. If you use propane, your electric rate is higher.
I mean, you're talking district-wise
No,
or consumer-wise?
An individual customer,
Okay.
if
Yeah,
you
because of
use
the bed rate.
propane,
I agree.
your electric rate is higher. So the other ones have a lower electric rate. And are there other board comments before we go to the audience? No? Okay, I think Ann Fleur had her hand up first.
Yeah, so I wanted to mention that both of these things came out of, Bob, your direction when you did the rate study of setting the rates in a way to encourage people to use more electricity and move away from propane. And they directly came from those comments you made. And the reason we've been talking about doing an electric residential customer rate discount is to encourage people to shift their usage from propane to electric, and people that switch to all electric or are using all electric are obviously using more electric than any other customers. And so it was a way to help incentivize people to do that. And the heat pump study in the same vein is to look at ways that we can make it easier for people to transition from propane to electric, see what's been done in the valley, see what options are available for people, and provide an easier path for people to do that so that we can have more electric revenue coming in. You can have more electric revenue coming in and have a more balanced budget in the long run. And I think that they've both come to the top of the table in the list of items we've been discussing at the planning committee over the last few months, especially since last winter with the issues with propane capacity, in not only being a way to help increase electric revenues, but help encourage people to move off of propane and potentially help alleviate the issues that the district is having there as well. And so I think those are the two reasons why, in general, the planning committee has been focusing on these and wanted to bring them to the table and confirm that the board agrees that these are worthwhile avenues to continue pursuing and are going to support the direction the district board has previously given as to what their intents are.
Good, thanks. Howard?
Yeah, I just wondered, I thank Ann Fleur for her comments. Because the district was considering investing considerable sum in expanding propane storage. So everything we can do to reduce demand for propane makes the effective storage increase relative to our use. So there's an not so easy to quantify benefit that comes out of this. And it may, Bob, you've kind of said like this is a zero-sum game. And that whatever discount we give to the all electric customers would have to then be borne by the other customers. But I was wondering, what about the public benefits charge? Is this something that could be used for this?
I'd have to look into that.
I guess what I would,
And one thing I will say is it is 100% with regards to water and wastewater. I have no idea for electric, 100% illegal to have discounted rates for any reason. Senior citizen, disabled, you can't do that. It is illegal. I presume the same is true, but we would have to get the attorney's opinion on that.
You cannot discriminate on category of people, but you can actually have program for different rates. This type, like PG&E has tons of different rates depending on what people, and you usually let people choose between the rates.
They're not a POU, they're an IOU.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah.
so what I would just say is, like, again, going back to my comments, like the planning aspect of this conversation is like, I see these as means to an end.
Yeah, right.
And what I would say is that the guidance from the board is planning's main objective in the next fiscal year, 6 months, 12 months, is to come back to the board with recommendations on how to have a long-term plan to fuel switch propane to electric.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what I think these are examples, like ideas. And so I personally don't want to be wedded to these are the two things that we would have to focus on. I would want the guidance of the board to be planning, come back with something that says, here's your recommendation, here are the things, 10 things you considered, here are your recommendations on how we should go forward. That's how I would approach this personally.
Yeah, it makes sense. I like that.
I like the broader approach. And I also think you were requesting there for some legal consultation, perhaps, and I think that was one of my concerns is having two different kilowatt.
Different committee. Attack.
It's attack that asked for that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're gonna need it. You're gonna need it. You're gonna need it for this.
But yeah, I mean, for this is what.
Because we need an answer. My concern was, could you have different customers apply different pricing to different electric
I
customers?
mean, I agree with Ann Flora. Anything we can do to increase the understanding so people know the benefits and the costs to transition off of propane is helpful. On whether an all electric discount achieves that or not, I don't really know. But we would have to cover the cost of doing it through some other means.
Actually, here it's just asking to be able to work on this, not making any decision, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'd be in favor of the more broad definition in that specific program.
And I would say that in the spirit of what if I had to think about what a planning committee should be doing, it was called the planning committee. That is a plan for the future as opposed to some of the more narrowed things that not saying these are, but I'm just saying like PDC funds or energy efficiency, those are more narrowed. I would think that the planning committee would want to focus on a longer term strategy that gets us a pathway to a future that we envision.
Yeah.
That's what I think a planning committee should do.
Mhm.
And I think if the guidance was focus on propane to electric fuel switching, all the things that we could do as a community.
And efficiency, reductions, ability to reduce demand. Yeah, I agree. Okay, does that give you enough guidance, Scott?
I think that's great. Thank you.
Any other
No.
comments? Okay, great. Okay, item 10, major projects update, Eric?
So. Really, nothing's really changed except for we took out the propane tanks and roofs. We shoved that off to discussion for next budgeting cycle. So pushed that off for that. Other than that, really nothing's changed.
And how? Okay, good.
Everything's on track.
Okay, general managers report then?
So on the wastewater treatment plant, speaking of schedules, we had a SCADA PLC kickoff meeting between the integrator, the designer, who is also the designer, and then the Stantec and our staff, trying to figure out how we're going to coordinate a live plant and the switchover. And it's going to be interesting and it's going to be challenging for sure. Then we had a scheduling meeting with the contractor themselves. I don't know if anyone saw, but there was some activity at the wastewater plant. Towards the middle end of the week, they did potholing for the canopy over the CIP tank. So that's part of the project. So they had a 8-inch vacuum trailer out here that was the way they were going to pothole because they were afraid they were going to hit utilities because the plant is super old and nobody knows where anything is. So,
and that's something that can be done in winter?
It's basically they cut the pavement. They have a vacuum trailer that injects water and then sucks everything back up, including 6-inch diameter rocks, which we have lots of.
Wow.
Into a trailer. Then they dump that trailer. They haul that stuff off site, and it's safer than taking a 3-foot auger and dropping it down. And so they potholed in, and they'll come back with the auger later. But this is just to see, is there anything in the way, or did we hit refusal? Did we hit bedrock? One of the holes we definitely did. So now it'll be a slight redesign to accommodate anchoring into bedrock instead of going 12 feet deep. It'll be shallower. So,
but the actual construction then would be after snow, or they would try to do it during winter?
This was just something they could get done right now because there's something they could get done.
Okay,
and they had it scheduled. Although the snow definitely kept them from coming over the day they originally had scheduled. We're still dealing with SB 1383, which is Cal Recycle and food waste diversion. We met with our regulator, who's we're very unusual, as we are with everything else, apparently. Very unusual situation. We're not a jurisdiction according to district council, according to this one regulator. He thinks we are. And he wants us to regulate Vail. Vail's not our customer. So I reached out to all 3 counties and spoke with their Mary Pito from Amador, Julie from El Dorado, and Sam Booth, who we deal with at TriTac from Alpine County. And they are, well, Mary was unaware of the sprung structure having food, so she's added that parcel to her list. But it's not a tier 2. So they have some minor reporting requirements, but there's no diversion requirements. But all the counties are aware of Vail and 7800 Club, food waste diversion, and they will be handling that. So hopefully that satisfies the state that we are not responsible for regulating someone who's not our customer, which is impossible. I went to the Northern California Joint Pole Association meeting. Nothing that really terribly impacts us. I did go to the WAPA CVP customer meeting. CVP is Central Valley Project, which is the one we're part of. That's how I found out about the rate study, and they're going through the rate making process right now. And then I went to the CMUA legislative and regulatory planning meeting as well. So the other thing, just for the board to be aware of, and Supervisor Brown was kind enough to share some insight on this as well, but PG&E is looking at selling just under half of their all hydro projects. They're selling it from the Pitt River to the Hat to the McComb, which what could potentially impact the district.
They're doing, PG&E is doing is they're actually separating hydro from the mothership. And so it'll be a whole separate entity as Facebook is, Google is an Alphabet and all the rest of that.
Okay, and that includes their pumped hydro then as well.
Right, so that makes hydro just a whole separate entity of the mothership. And so, and as it will go up to public, and then they're trying to get more investors to
I see.
buy into the hydro, which at this current time is a money maker, which a lot of the rest of the system is not because of lawsuits and everything else.
All right.
And that's all I had.
Okay, any questions?
Thank you, Supervisor Brown, for helping.
Yeah, any questions?
Would that make us less susceptible to PSPS interruptions?
No.
Same.
That does, that's environment, that's, you know, what happens in the system at that period, at a period of time.
Yeah.
Okay, Rick? Go ahead.
So just going to give a quick report on the fire department. For the month of October, we had 12 calls, which brings our annual total up to 111 calls, which is a lot more than last
Sorry, is
year.
that fiscal or calendar? Annual.
A calendar year, sorry. Yeah, calendar year since last January.
So 12 calls in November so far.
October.
In October,
This is all
sorry.
going to be for an October report.
Okay, I'm sorry, misunderstood.
With, as you know, we have the on-call system. We had one day that was not covered for the on-call, which I covered remotely. I'm pleased to announce for November, the calendar is completely full, and so hopefully we don't have a 0 day for the on-call. Of the 12 calls, we had 4 alarm calls, 2 were in Meadowstone, 2 were in Timber Creek townhomes, and they were caused by contract work. So we'll be billing those HOAs for nuisance alarms. There were 3 medical aids. All 3 were transported, 2 by ground, 1 by helicopter.
Sorry, but you mentioned in the last report that I think Meadowstone got an invoice. Is that the same invoice or this is?
They have not received the invoice. I wanted to wait for the month end and then.
So is there gonna be 2, like,
1 invoice for the last.
for 2 charges or?
It'll be an invoice for 2. I'm gonna go back to the calendar year. Historically, if it's over 3 or over 2, you're gonna get billed. So I need to make sure my count is correct, and I'll work with Tommy to actually create the invoice for.
And so, so there's now, so basically you're implementing for all of these false alarms, so all 4 of them, not, I mean, I just remember Meadowstone because you mentioned it last time.
Yeah.
But now for all of these things, you have a calendar year rule of the 3rd one, or the 4th one, I guess, is when you send the bill.
Third one.
The third one. And then is it when is it, and is it the next 3rd one, or is it everyone gets another charge?
Everyone gets a charge after 3.
After 2.
2. After 2, you get.
After 2, you get charged
After
for every
2 you
single
get
one.
charged.
So if you have 10, you get 7 charges.
Thank you.
Yeah, in a calendar year starting January. Which is something we've never done, but it is in our ordinance to do. And I think.
Well, we have to do something. They're not being careful.
Any other questions about alarm call? I was going to actually bring billing up next month, but I'm glad you talked about it, Doug. Thanks. As I was saying, 3 of the medical aids all 3 were transported, 2 by ground, 1 by helicopter. We had 5 MVAs, motor vehicle accidents out on the highway, 2 with multiple injuries within the incidents. 2 were non-injury, 1 was fatality, unfortunately, in front of the Kirkwood Inn. And that's the update on just the general call logs and run report for the fire department. We're also, in the last month, are in contract with Lexipool to provide us assistance with the SOPs, which we have none right now. So we're creating a standard.
Explain SOP to them.
Yeah, please.
We're creating a standard operation procedures for the fire department, which is really a risk management tool, but also a way for our volunteers to understand what level of things they can do on certain types of calls. For example, the 2 in and 2 out rule for SCBAs. Like if you want to go into a burning building, you need to have a RIT team, a rapid intervention team, standing by to rescue the 2 firefighters that are in the building. We'll create a SOP through Lexipool, which is a company that not only will help us create the SOPs, the standards, the guidelines, but they'll also monitor state, federal, and OSHA rules and regulations, as well as NFPA. So if anything new happens, for example, during COVID, a lot of new rules, regulations, and suggestions came out of that. We'll be able to implement those quickly and mirror Eastern Alpine County as well as Amador Fire Protection District with our SOPs, because they are also as part of Lexipol. So it's really a step in the right direction. The overall cost annually is about $6,000 a year, but it's a much needed thing to do versus me using the existing cut and paste SOPs that I've had in the past, which are okay, but this is going to get us to where we really need to be. As part of this training, or as part of Lexipol, is that there's a training component. So now it's called Fire Rescue One. And so each volunteer will be able to sign up either via their phone or their computer and basically upload their certifications, whether they have an EMT certification or firefighter certification, whatever it might be, into the system so I can see it. I can assign them different agenda or different topics, whether it's firefighting or EMS. So they can do this on their own time. Plus, if we can help us with training, we can assign assignment. For example, we're going to do ladders next week or something like that. I can assign them the coursework, the bookwork in advance. Hopefully they've done it. And then when we hit the ground for training, then we can move much more efficiently. And again, this is a program that Eastern Alpine County is using. So if we send our firefighters down to, like on December 9th, they're doing a mass casualty drill down there, we'll get credit for that drill, and I can document and track the training for our volunteers. So we're really, it's going to be worth the money. It's going to be a little bit of hardship on my part getting it implemented. And then once we get it finalized, we'll have the general manager, of course, review it. I'll probably have to send it to council for a quick peek just to bless it, but I don't see a big problem with it. Couple more things. One, we're currently up to 18 volunteers, which is pretty much my maximum. I don't have any more walkers, turnouts. More importantly, training software suite. It's 18 is a manageable number. If we get a certified paid pro professional that walks in the door and wants to help out in the winter, I'm going to take them, of course. But hopefully the 18 are going to stick around and be motivated. Some of them are seasonal employees with the resort, but it's really nice to have trainings where we're actually, there's multiple groups working at one time. And it's really a shot of adrenaline in the arm. And thanks to Ann Floor and the captains on the department for really pushing the community and getting more people through the door. So I appreciate that. And then finally for fire department, the case, Ann Floor and one of my captains, Joel Gomez, approached KCA about using their facilities, their workout room essentially, and the showers. And so they've checked with the board and they've approved that. And so I'll be working with John Ryder to have our volunteers go over there and work out, which is a great recruitment and retention item. So we thank the KCA for that. And once we get that put together, I'll probably generate a letter with the general manager. Thank you. Their caveat is they have an option to charge us in the future, and I appreciate that. So we'll
drive them for fire services, so it'll work out.
So that's it for fire department. Moving on to operations. Yeah, sure.
Have you had any success in finding a contractor to do hydrant repairs?
No, we have not.
Okay.
We've had a couple dead ends, but
No, go ahead.
I was going to say we're open for suggestions and ideas. If it doesn't snow, we'll use some internal staff to do it.
Okay.
Some normal staff.
Some of the ones that have been disabled, the ones that are out of service, which is about 6 maybe.
There's actually 2 that are completely out of service. Everything else works. They may not have the full T-handle assembly, but there are 2 that are questionable ones at the lodge. I've got 3 other hydrants near it, so I'm not too worried about that one. And then one's on Fremont.
Okay.
So
Under fire, I just wanted to bring up Mountain County EMS has their mobile simulation lab up and running. So if you want to do any type of EMT type of training, that is available.
good to know. Thank you.
Where are they located?
It's a mobile app.
Oh, wow.
It's just an ambulance. I mean, it's
Yeah.
an old American Legion ambulance that we've got a mannequin in there. And then the instructor can sit there and put in different scenarios on the mannequin. And then
That's
everybody
great.
can practice on that mannequin. What to do. It does everything from blood pressure, all kinds of crazy stuff. More than I know.
That's good to know.
Yeah, I wasn't aware. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll look into that. For operations again, snow removal, we've got a full crew. We've got a couple that haven't quite hit the deck yet, but they're going to come up next week to do the final paperwork and be on record. These are former employees who worked for us last year. I checked with David, our mechanic, and I asked him been here for a little while, so do you have enough shear pins for all employees? Do you have cutting edges? What about the rams? And I went through every piece of equipment, and everything's working except for waiting for a windshield to come from Canada for T5. I think it's T5. T4. And we just got the final little piece of GPS device for the new holder machine that we have. So anyway, really things are looking good in snow removal. It's a good crew. There's only one employee who's first time ever doing snow removal, and I saw him blowing snow in the parking lot, and he's got it. So, and this week we had a nasty little 1-inch angry storm that kind of iced over the roads. It's a great training store for our new operator, but it was really nice to see that all the stakes are put up. There's no more stakes that need to be put up unless there's something that a homeowner saw that we didn't. And
all the stakes have been repaired then?
All stakes have been repaired.
So we can clear that for next year.
Yes.
Reset them.
Yes, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But anyway, we're looking really good, and we've also, implemented the employee housing as a place to put multiple employees during storm cycles. So we have better housing facilities for our staff this year. And if anything changes, I'll certainly let the board know.
We have 2 questions for you.
Sorry, I want to add on
Yeah.
to snow removal since we're talking about 2 contracts unsigned, 2 signed contracts unpaid.
Right.
So we won't be applying the ones that are unpaid or the ones that aren't signed.
One of my questions.
I'm psychic.
Second question. At the last meeting, I had asked if you would consider putting together some sort of community forum or event or some way to talk to the community about what's changed in snow removal since last year and what they can expect coming up this year. And I was wondering if you put any thought into that or consideration to do
We did do that. We sent it to the HOA presidents and they were going to share it with their HOAs. And whether they did or not, I don't know, but we did send it to them. So,
Yeah.
And we helped them develop some of their internal snow removal kind of here. If you're a guest here, here's the protocols. Here's how to stake your car. And, between Rachel at Thimblewood and Tony at East Meadows, they each had kind of their own, and I went to the HOA president's meeting that you kind of kicked back up, and they are merging those 2 documents and sharing them internally, but that included what we sent to them as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other than
the only other update would be is the one customer that we weren't sure we're going to resign. And
yeah, they've opted to go elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. As for other operations, it was a big scramble to get things buttoned up, put away, the irrigation meter shut off, everything before the snow hit. Yet we're still having to go back and accommodate a few contractors on our terms. But all in all, we're prepared for winter. And as you know, the membranes, we had an issue with the membranes not fitting, the control heads, the upper assemblies were not correct. Those membranes have been shipped back to Coke. It's in their facilities. And this week, we're actually doing a chemical clean on our membranes to ensure that we can get through the winter without an issue.
Did they give any indication on who will pay for the additional cost?
We gave them an indication, and we are negotiating it with them right now. We're discussing it with them right now, and I'll maybe give you an update next month.
Thanks.
They had a complete company change. Some people are no longer with them, so we'll have more next month for you.
They got bought out.
Yeah.
So there's a lack of historical knowledge, which fortunately we have a nice paper trail for. But Josh may be getting involved.
That's the end of my report unless there's any more questions.
Any questions for Rick? No? Okay, I'll move on to standing committee reports, finance,
Nothing to add.
okay, operations,
Nothing to add.
okay, and communications.
We didn't meet.
I think we need.
You sure?
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
We match.
I'm gonna give you a second try. Operations.
I need one.
I know the feeling. Believe me, I know the feeling. Where can you?
On what?
On operations?
On
You have-
operation,
you have anything
no,
you wanna
no,
add? I mean, I'm sorry, on
Yeah.
communication.
on communication. Yeah.
We went over the communications plan across the utilities and what we wanted to see, and we're gonna bring a draft communications plan back
Yeah.
in December,
Okay,
which is we're skipping November because it's a bit to assemble. We'll be back in December.
okay,
There's a short version.
all right, good. And planning, anything you want to add?
Just will say, thank you. Guidance has been received from the earlier conversation. I'll take that
Okay.
forward. And then, the different things that are in flight are related to it. So we will continue to do those and then put together some plans towards a larger initiative.
Okay, and personnel, Matt, we discussed one specific management design change that staff's going to work on and then present to the board when they're ready. And for water and wastewater,
Correct.
how we want to structure that. And that was the only major item I know. And then temporary advisory committee.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information in the write-up
There
I
is.
provided,
You've
so
been busy.
I will refer to that. And this doesn't actually fully encompass what's happened because we met on Wednesday, November 8th, which is not in time to get, an update into the board packet. So, please defer to all this. I will just start by just saying thank you to everyone on our committee. We have been very active, people putting a lot of time and effort into making this event happen that we talked about the last meeting. And so, it's just going really well. I think we're having good discussions in our conversations. We're collaborating effectively. There are two main items that I would come back to, and they're in the recommendations essentially. But I think one of the things that has happened in the last couple of days since the meeting that we had on Wednesday was talking about like food and beverage and costs associated with that. And this comes back to related to like the time of the event. I think we're all very excited about Thursday, December 28th as the date. 5 to 7 p.m. was the initial thought. And then, we got back some numbers yesterday, actually this morning, about some of the costs and maybe Vail providing some of the, what it would cost for them to provide food. And, budgeting for, who knows how many people we're going to have. We'll RSVP, we'll get better numbers, but, it could be upwards of like $1,000 of if we provided different levels of food and beverage and things like that. And I think one of the things that I was thinking about earlier today was, whether we have budget for this event, and that's related to this main point on scheduling time and location, because we could also move just to like 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And that's outside of more of a main dinner hour where people might be able to get by with maybe slightly larger, smaller snacks and as opposed to a larger mealish type of event. So that's one way to accommodate this if we wanted to do that, or we could.
What do you think would get the best attendance?
I don't know that it matters. On my personal opinion is that I think if you're here on a Thursday, lifts close at 4:05, and is that going to make a big difference on a Thursday in December? I don't know. Maybe for some people, our intent is that this will have a Zoom option and that people will be able to attend at whatever time it is. I keep going back and forth in my head on, what's better or worse here, if it's going to, significantly impact it. But I think from a budget and time perspective, it might save us some money. I don't know where we get the money from, the 501c3 or something else, but that's the thinking on it is, whether it's, and we haven't had a chance to talk about this as a committee. This is just from information that I'm coming up with from getting some of the information from Dan, who has been great to partner on this regard.
Yeah.
So that's just something that I'm trying to think through. And if anyone has any strong opinions on initial reactions, I would love to hear them. But that's our initial thought was 5 to 7, but I could go 3:30 to 5:30, or I don't know, it could end early too, who knows? But that's anything that we have thoughts on time, assuming that everyone's okay with the date, but the time, if anyone has any thoughts on that, that would be the first agenda recommendation that I'd love to get.
Yeah, it's hard to guess, but I think some people might not want to give up their dinner.
Right.
So the early
Yeah.
time might work better.
That's what I was thinking, 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, with the difference, do 4 to 6, or
Yeah, I feel like,
get off the lifts and go to the meeting and
Okay,
go home for dinner.
okay,
I think one of your committee members just raised her hand.
okay. I'll let you have.
Hi, Doug, it's Sam Fleur. Just from a parent's perspective, and I know a lot of homeowners and KMPUD clients are parents, the 3 to 4 window can be tricky with pickup from jets and ski team and things happening right around then too. So maybe 4 to 6 or 4 to 6, I think would be okay. People have time to go pick up their kids and get to the next thing.
Yeah, Jets doesn't run the normal program that day, but I think they have their special program on Thursday, Friday that week, which would pick up at 3 o'clock. In KSDF, I don't know what their schedule is at all, but that's a good point.
So I mean 4 o'clock gives people time to pick up their kids and move on to the next thing.
Yep, understood.
Okay.
So that's the first part of this, I think. And then I think, we can discuss as a committee and come back. I mean, assuming that you all are okay with E3-ish, 3:30-ish, 4-ish timeline.
Yeah.
What our thought was to start, and Eric, do you have the flyer that I sent?
This is not my computer.
Okay. We have a flyer that we've created that we would like to start sending out to get RSVPs and get interest. And the idea would be that this would happen sooner than later, as long as the date and time, we'll hash out the details, but if the board's okay, we would like to work with staff to get something using the mailing list and then start posting this on social media, things like that we can start advertising now to get people excited about it.
Yeah. Terrific.
Thank you. And then the second item was just in terms of we have 4 subcommittees right now, which one of them is on how to finance. And so Bertrand and Eric Rickert are the 2 people who are focused on that. And one of the thoughts was that they've put together some of their initial reactions on some of the different options that came up through the 2017, I think it was, the effort that was put together on this. And that it would be helpful if they can either get a consultant or a legal counsel for an hour or 2 potentially to give feedback on some of these elements. I think we were going to use Eric initially as a first pass to help maybe save some of that time. But the question is really, do we have budget or authorization to use up to an hour or 2 of some time?
What type of legal?
Just referring to the different processes and the different types of mechanisms to try to help us understand. We had that 218 consultant come in and gave a background on that. So that kind of information of like, would this work? How would this work in this way? What would it kind of look like? Can it fund this or can't it fund this? Because we're talking about fire and emergency medical services as one thing, right? But from what I took away from the 218, it's a little bit hard to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think there are things like that we want to make sure that we have some clarity in as we go forward to bring information to the community. And that would be the intent of that kind of communication.
Well, I would like to add, this is actually critical because we really need to have someone looking at it from the district perspective. I mean, John Bliss, I really appreciate what he did, but he's providing a service that he would love to have us as a customer.
Right.
So I think it's very important to have a second opinion on a number of things, especially related to EMS services. I mean, the 218 is actually totally mute. I mean, if I've just listened twice again that presentation, but there is several 218 process, and so the one we are contemplating for fire, we have to contemplate for fire, is actually not mentioning EMS at all. So there is clearly some concern on that front. I know that he mentioned that actually in his presentation. So that would be a key recommendation. So we make sure that the proposal, especially for the funding that we are going to present, are solid legal before we go public. And we've quite embarrassing that we propose something and then later legal tell us that's not something we should
So
do.
what I would recommend on that front is put it together in writing and we'll send it through to the attorney. Otherwise, it's going to devolve to misunderstandings, mishearings,
Yep.
and we're going to have two different answers coming out. Let's just get the questions in writing.
Agreed.
And if, I don't know how much money the board wants to spend at it, but we're already in the hole quite a bit, so. But it's probably good.
So really,
it's
you
good.
write it up and send it to you, and then you could orchestrate what
I
legal review.
work with district council.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that's.
sounds good.
Okay, I mean,
All right.
You get a test.
Yeah, something else I'd like to add that happened since this meeting of somewhat importance is that Eric Ricker and myself have met with Tom Fortune and exactly a 3-layer system that we need to work with. So there'll be a new general manager hopefully by the end of this month. That will be the primary contact once established. Tom Fortune is actually the CEO of the 3 resort and actually is involved as well. So the good thing is that we're extremely informed on the whole measure process and all the, because Matt was actually working with him. And number 3, Vel has a new executive, I'm not sure, I don't remember the title, that is actually for all the Western region. And she's coming in the region, I think also end of November. And so he's planning to bring her to Kirkwood, and that's another layer that need to be convinced. But basically, when we approach him, we ask that we will contribute more than 8% on the fire assessment, and so far nothing on EMS. And he's totally agreeing with that. And so we actually had numbers based on the beginning of the package that we have. That was actually stipulating in fold of increase. And basically, so we mentioned that we think we would need about 600K additional and for the fire department. And his reaction was that it's really thought this was manageable. So,
okay.
It's early, but at least there is a positive response, and Val definitely want to be part of the discussion.
Okay.
Annually, yeah.
Okay. The 600K was for the whole the 600K is for the whole program or
additional? So, I mean, I'm not saying Val is going to give us 600K, but we said.
I was trying to figure out if that was Vail's share or whether that
so
was
we have
the program.
We have not made any progress there. That's
Okay.
right. But if we, based on the initial looking at the package that we put forward, it looked like it could be less, it could be more, but 600K additional would help a lot the fire department, that's for sure. And that for him was a totally manageable number.
But Vail would pay a part of that, or that's Vail's share that you're talking about?
We have not discussed on share because this is the difficult point indeed.
I was just trying to get is you're ballparking 600,000 was the total program cost?
No, additional.
Addition
to what we have now.
Okay, what do we have now?
300 something.
360, 320.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I was just trying to get to. So it's around 960 or something like that. Total. Okay.
Okay.
Because we wanted to have a sense of the magnitude. And so we said nothing is set in stone. We are still looking. We are going to get a forum to get feedback from the community to see what level the community is ready. But bottom line, Val wants to be part of it.
Good.
Okay. Good. So general discussion. So Bertrand, do you want to go first? You want to bring up the WAPA?
Okay. Yeah, actually I had a number of things. So because of snow situation, we missed the financial, and you went so fast that it was already done. But anyway, yes, as a discussion, I really think it might be part of the red study of 2025. However, this need to be thought in anticipation. So because I think WAPA is opening enrollment, or I don't know exactly how it works, but last time we could not be there. If we want to be there in 25, we need to understand what it is before. So that's something I would love to understand, is to have staff explain the various constraints on this WAPA program.
Okay.
And what can it bring to the district,
Mhm.
especially if it's stability in the fund, in the cost. Yeah.
Okay.
As a general comment, I was going to ask to pull the AP voucher for a few questions, and I'm not going to go through it today, but I think, I know you tried to get this meeting in just a few hours, but since people are not, board members are not on all committee, I think the AP voucher is actually a good starting point to get a few information. For example, I was planning to ask things like, I suppose this is the repair of the RPN. Is that, I'm guessing, because that was 120K or something like that expenses. And we don't have that level of information in the AP voucher, and it's not described. And since, for example, I'm not on operation or on finance, I could not have this information. So I think, for the sake of communication and transparency, we need to work better than what we do now on the committees and how do you call it, the consensus agenda, no, consensus
Consent for claims.
Consent calendar. Yeah.
Can you clarify
Yeah.
what's your recommendation is to have that in the May 9?
Yeah, I think having it in the consent is basically pushing the thing, and it removes a lot of opportunity to ask questions. So today I missed it because I was 5 minutes late, and I think there are information that are worthwhile. For example, I was making that was a technical information. So I saw that we had invested in sonar tank gauge for the propane, and I was wondering if it was a replacement or a new tool, and because I think that's actually
I just could make a suggestion, but I do the finance, as soon as I get those reports.
Yeah.
I type in, any questions I have, clarifications, things like that, I send it over to Eric. And I can handle a whole lot of things offline that just, just like, I don't, what was this for? What was that for? How much this doesn't look right, whatever. And we handle all that pretty quickly.
But like you said, you are on finance, so you get it actually several days before.
Yeah, I know.
No, finance doesn't see AP vouchers. That's
No,
not
it
true.
doesn't.
No. What I was suggesting, shouldn't be controversial. It's just a suggestion, which is, if you looked at the AP stuff and you shot Eric an email and said, hey, what was this? What was that? What was this? I mean, you probably get answers pretty quick.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I'm not.
Okay, why don't we keep going?
I mean, can I just say, I did propose at the last meeting that we change our board meeting dates. So then that way, if the board packet comes out, and it doesn't matter what committee you're on, if you've looked at their packets or not, board packet comes out 2 weeks before a meeting or 1 week, a week and a half, you can look at ask all those questions in advance too. So it's not even gonna be dependent on committees. So we have many ways of solving this.
Okay.
In the report from the summary report from Tommy, is mentioning that our number were off for the fire, I think, because of the measure E. So I think one thing I would love to know is how much actually was spent on measure E, because I don't think that I was ever spelled out clearly between the various fees of consultant and elections and legal. I think this number should be communicated. Another issue that I have on the information we are getting now is on the AP voucher, we are seeing that all the stipends that are paid to the fire staff, not staff, but fire volunteers, I'm sorry. But I understand that actually some of it is coming from the 501c3, and so it's not clear to me. That part is not clear. So who is actually paying the stipend? Is it the PUD? Is it the 501c3 or both? In which ratios? And I think that'd be nice to have some clarification on that. Irrigation. I see that Doug has much more success than me to have agenda item. But as already explained that I wanted to see the irrigation data. I also think we should discuss, because currently we are charging a base fee for the irrigation, while we actually, for the people who have water, they already have a base fee that should cover it. So anyway, it has issues of beautification of the valley, and we are losing a lot of trees now because of the consequences of the previous drought in the previous year. And so I think this is something that should be discussed, and I asked that to have after how many meetings, and it's still not coming up. And you see here. Yeah, so and the way the committee structure work is, so we have basically people studying a topic for 1 hour, and we get a report often that is just very small, and actually we don't get it ahead of time, so we don't have the opportunity to think through. And so I think because board member can only be on 2 committees out of 5 or 6, it's actually, and again, I understand it's because you want to keep the clock running fast, but it's actually making difficult to actually, and for being able to have all the information on the various committee, since we are not. So what I did is I can do it all, but when I could, I actually was logging in to be a silent listener. So I get more information, more background information that's actually presented during the board meeting. But I think we need to have either better communication report or change the way this is working, actually. I mean, if we want to have give opportunity for feedback from the board member on all topics, which I think we need to. Then I just would like, since it's going to be my last meeting, board meeting on this term, to offer a few observations. So there are some positive. We actually in the last 4 years have been able to deliver the utilities and the service to the community. However, it's not been a smooth ride, and I think we really need to improve on how the district is delivering the service and to the community, and what I was going to say besides that is at this stage, basically, I'm going to wish good luck to the next board, and but I really think the board need to better represent the wood community and work for the wood community.
Okay, anyone else have items? I have 2 short ones. First of all, I'm gonna ask Eric to send some stuff out in advance that we might use in the next board meeting. One is, I've been looking through to Robert's Rules of Orders that we operate from, and I found it quite useful to look at the summary. So one is a summary of just that we could potentially use for people who are attending. They just illustrate how we operate. So I'm gonna ask that Eric send that out, and then that'll be a discussion topic for the next board meeting. The second thing, which I found really great, it's a presentation by Oliver Yee, who I don't know, but it sort of talks about the role of the board, responsibilities between board and staff, the Brown Act, conflicts of interest, et cetera. And I think I'll ask him to send this out as well. I think this would be a real good thing to maybe possibly schedule a time.
I think I sent that to the
Yeah,
whole.
you did.
That was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we could.
So-
But with a board, like.
Yeah,
schedule.
I'll send it again. I see.
Okay.
I see what
Like,
you're
you know,
saying.
a good.
Yeah,
start.
we'd schedule a time to go through all this as a board and make sure everybody's up to date. I found it very helpful to review. So those two items. All right, one will be a repeat and the other will be new. So I put it into a nicer format, so I'll send that to you and then ask you to send it out. So those are my two items. Okay.
So actually, yeah, I have another thing I wanted to ask. So at last board meeting discussion still, I asked where the trackless and the medium-sized loader were purchased, and you said you didn't know. So I'm surprised because it's a big expense, and so I think this actually should be public actually. So I'm asking here officially that you can send me the invoices of this equipment, because I don't see them, I guess, on the AP voucher because they are financed probably. I don't know why and how, but so I could see the RPM work, but I could not see the other loader. So I'm asking to get this information.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Say it again?
I don't have it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Okay. Weird.
someone has it. I mean, clearly.
I thought you were asking me, so I don't have it.
No, I didn't ask you. I was asking actually. I
Okay.
asked the staff to provide it. Yeah.
Not hearing any other items. I mean, I believe we don't really know who the new board is until next Tuesday. When the
what?
17th, isn't it?
well, the 15th, the next Tuesday is when the final votes are counted for the
Okay.
election.
Yeah.
So until that comes time, I don't know who else, is by mail. So I'm not making any assumptions on who's on what. But if you're proven to be right, I want to at least use this opportunity to thank you for the service that you've done over the last 4 years and your contributions. And if that's premature, I'll take it back.
Okay. Well, honestly, the number are such that I could not see a change of that magnitude. Like that.
Okay, that could be true too, but
I understand numbers.
okay, great. So with that, this meeting's then adjourned, and we'll see you all on December 8th at 2:00.